She took a job delivering supplies to a remote ranch, not knowing the man in the cabin was the richest cowboy alive. "You know nobody's ever met the man behind that ridge, right?" the supply clerk said, eyeing the rope securing the crates. His voice was low, wary, the kind men used when talking about something not quite cursed, but not quite clean either. June did not flinch. She cinched the last strap on the wagon tighter, the leather creaking beneath her gloves. "If he needs goods, he needs someone to bring them. I am someone." Her voice was tired, steady, and carried that edge only women who had buried too many dreams could forge. The morning was still young, but fog already pressed down on the earth like a woolen blanket soaked through. The trail ahead, winding through the red dirt pass of northern Wyoming, looked like it was swallowed whole by ghosts. She climbed up to the driver's seat, cracked the reins, and the mule started its slow, dutiful march up the incline. The town, the clerk, the murmurs, they all fell away behind her. June had been a widow 3 winters now, 26, wiry, proud. She had lost her husband to a bullet fired somewhere along the Rio Grande. During a skirmish wrapped in flags and names she stopped saying. All she kept was his hat and a promise to stay standing. And for the last 6 months, she did so on the back of a freight wagon, delivering everything from grain to pickled beets to the loneliest ranches God ever forgot. This one was the most forgotten of all. The order form was yellowed and smudged, written in tight, black ink, cross-pine provisions, winter grade. Delivered directly. Name C. Weston. No return address. No note. Just a scrawl in the corner, sharp like someone carved it rather than wrote it. Leave by porch. As she crested the ridge hours later, her breath caught. The land dropped into a clearing, and at the center stood a cabin so still, so untouched, it could have been carved from the bones of the mountain itself. It had no smoke, no dog barking, no chicken scratch or boot prints, just a single wooden sign dangling off the porch rail, faded by weather, leave by porch. June set the brake, climbed down. Her boots landed on frosted mud with a sound too loud for such silence. She unloaded the first crate, dried meat and flour, then the next, wool blankets, a knife, tin cups. She arranged them neatly, like a soldier laying down arms. Then she felt it. The stillness had changed. Not broken, not loud, but different. She turned slowly. Up in the loft window, just beyond the edge of frost-framed glass, a shadow shifted. Eyes. Not menacing, not curious, just watching. June held her stare for a moment longer than she meant to, then tipped her hat. "Goods delivered," she said aloud, voice firm. "Same time next month." No answer, no motion. She climbed back on the wagon, heart thudding, not from fear. From something older than fear. Something like recognition, like the sound of your name when it has not been spoken in a long time. The wheels groaned. The mule pulled. She left the cabin behind. But long after the trees swallowed it whole again, she still felt the weight of those eyes. Heavy, solitary, not lost but choosing to be gone. And from the cabin window, Cole Weston did not blink. Cole Weston never came out. Every time June rode up to the cabin, the porch was empty. The only evidence of him was a folded sheet of paper tucked into the crack of the wooden post by the door, a supply list, written in blocky, rigid handwriting that wasted no ink on pleasantries. No please, no thank you, only requests for salt, nails, flour, sometimes oats, and once, curiously, a book of psalms. Each list ended with the same sharp flourish, CW. June never saw his face, but she began to see something else. On the 4th delivery, she dropped her wool scarf while unloading the sacks of grain. She did not notice until she was halfway down the ridge, the wind stinging her neck. It had been her husband's scarf, worn, faded, the last thing he had wrapped around her shoulders before leaving for the war. She told herself it was just cloth. Still, she felt its absence like a weight in her chest. The next week, it was waiting, folded neatly, resting atop the fresh bundle of firewood stacked beside the porch. Not a speck of dirt on it. Her breath caught. Another day she arrived during a dry windstorm. The loose roof above her wagon creaked under the gusts, and one wheel had started to lift. But someone had placed a flat stone wedge under the axle. Quiet, intentional. June was not the kind of woman who believed in ghosts. But something about these quiet gestures, silent but thoughtful, unsettled her. No, not unsettled. Moved her. She began to leave small notes, nothing demanding. Just scraps of paper slipped beneath the supply crate. The first read, "Cold mornings ahead. Hope you have enough firewood." No reply. Then, after another week, "The mountain fox tracks are back. Best check your henhouse. Still nothing. But on the 7th trip, she left something more personal. Written in uneven ink on the back of a flower label, she wrote, "People who do not speak often still need to hear kind words. Just in case you do." She did not expect a response. She had stopped expecting much from anyone, long ago. But when she returned the following week, after unloading oats and oilskin, she found a smaller note tucked inside the crate's lid. The paper was coarse, torn from an old journal. 3 words, nothing more. "I hear you." Her hand trembled as she held it. She reread it twice, then again. 3 words, but they hit harder than letters that filled whole pages. She folded the note, tucked it into the inside pocket of her coat, and rode back down the mountain with a new weight inside her, not heavy, but solid. Real. She thought of nothing else all week. The following delivery, June hesitated after dropping off the goods. Snow clung to the tops of her boots. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the clearing. Her fingers brushed the wagon's reins, but she could not yet leave. Then she saw him. A tall figure stood near the edge of the barn, backlit by orange dusk. Cowboy hat low over his eyes, shoulders broad beneath a heavy coat. He was not hiding, not exactly, but not stepping forward, either. Their eyes met across the distance. Hers narrowed slightly, uncertain. His gaze held for a beat too long, and then, without a word, he turned and walked into the shadows of the cabin. June's breath stayed caught in her throat even as the horses began to stir. That was the first time she saw him. And even though no words passed between them, something did. A silent conversation, carved into cold air and falling light. She climbed onto the driver's bench slowly. All the way down the mountain, the image of that lone cowboy standing in the firelit dusk stayed with her. And for the first time in years, June felt something she had forgotten how to name. It was not longing. It was not fear. It was a beginning. The first snow came down in long, quiet ribbons, wrapping the mountains in silence. June pulled her coat tighter as she guided the wagon uphill, hooves crunching over ice-crusted soil. It had become routine now, deliver every second Tuesday, no words, just lists. But in the corners of her mind, questions began to settle like frost on a window pane. Who was this man, really? He lived like a shadow, never spoke, never asked for company. And yet, everything about his home said order. The porch was always swept, the wood neatly stacked. Tools hung precisely along the wall like a soldier's kit. His grocery list was so clean it could have passed for print. The way he wrote molasses, coarse salt, coffee said more than some men could in an entire sermon. June had seen men broken by war, by loss, by liquor, but never one who disappeared this way. Not physically, but quietly, intentionally. Back in town, she tried asking around, just lightly, over coffee. It was old Ben, the blacksmith, who gave her the answer. "Weston?" he said, frowning, setting down his tin mug. "You mean Cole Weston?" "That's the one," June replied. "Used to own half this basin. Richer than a railroad baron. Then got himself tangled with some sweet-talking bride from back east. Promised her the world. Built her that cabin, planned a chapel. Then boom, day before the wedding, she shows up with a lawyer. Took the land, took the cattle, left him with the view and his name." June blinked. He stayed. Ben shrugged. "I would have burned it all down." He stayed. Never sued. Never spoke. Just disappeared in place. June thanked him, heart unsettled. It explained the silence, the watchful eyes, the way Cole never stepped into town, never took more than he needed. That week his list came as usual, but with something strange tucked underneath. A slim book worn at the edges. It was the Call of the Wild. Inside the cover was no inscription, but a pressed sprig of pine rested between pages 47 and 48, where the dog first chooses to stay. She smiled despite herself. The week after that, tucked beneath the oats and horseshoes, was a small paper-wrapped parcel. Inside, a handful of lemon drops, candies, the kind children liked. For a moment, her breath hitched. She scribbled back, "You must have me confused. I do not have a child. But thank you." It was a polite correction, nothing more. But something in her chest trembled as she wrote back. Next trip, nestled beside the cornmeal, was a new item, a wildflower, pressed perfectly flat, tucked in parchment. No note, just the flower. The wind was sharp that day. Her cheeks burned from it. She held the bloom carefully, as if afraid it might crumble from something more than time. June did not know what she was expecting when she wrote back the following week. Maybe another list. Maybe silence. But she was not expecting to find Cole outside. He was not close, stood by the barn fence, arms crossed, coat drawn tight. She slowed the wagon to a stop. Their eyes locked across the snowy ground. She jumped down, boots crunching, walked until the distance was short enough for her voice to reach. "I do not need your pity," she said. Her voice was clear, unwavering. "And I know you are not made of stone." Cole said nothing. His jaw flexed slightly, but no sound came. June's breath clouded between them. She added softer, "You do not have to fix anything for me. Just do not pretend this is all nothing." Still nothing. Then, slowly, his eyes lowered. He stepped forward once, not to her but toward the cabin. And there, with the same hands that had built that porch, he lifted one hand and laid it gently against the beam of the roof above the door. Fingers spread, pausing. A touch, like memory, like apology. June's throat tightened. It was not an answer, not quite. But it was not silence either. She nodded once, turned back to her wagon, drove off through the snow, heart strangely full. Behind her, Cole watched. And the pressed flower still sat by her seat, a fragile thing not meant to last a winter, but held all the same. The sun had already dipped behind the craggy Wyoming ridges when Cole looked toward the path she usually came down. The same time, same day, every other week like clockwork. But this time no creaking wagon, no dust cloud, no faint whistle from that stubborn little mare she drove. Cole stepped out onto the porch, the wood creaking beneath his boots. He stood there, still as stone, one hand resting on the post. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Still nothing. He turned toward the barn, saddled his horse with swift, practiced hands. There was no panic in his face, only the kind of urgency that lived in the bones, forged by too many years of waiting for people who never returned. He followed the wagon tracks down the trail, eyes scanning the dirt with a soldier's focus. About a mile down, something caught his eye, a scrap of red wool, the hem of her coat. Cole's heart hitched. He kicked his horse into a gallop. It was not long before he found her. June lay crumpled beside the road, blood smeared across her temple, her hands scraped raw. Her wagon was overturned nearby, its goods scattered, the back broken open like a ripped satchel. One wheel was missing. A trail of boot prints led away from the scene. Cole slid off his horse before it had even stopped fully, dropping to his knees beside her. "June," he said low, voice breaking through its own rust. Her eyelids fluttered. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. That was enough. He lifted her gently, cradling her against his chest like something too precious to lose again. Then he looked up, eyes narrowing toward the trees. A figure moved in the brush, a man, dirty, staggering, holding a burlap sack with supplies. Cole set June back on the ground softly, stood and drew his revolver. The man saw him too late. "You don't want this," Cole growled. "I already got it." The man laughed, then lunged forward. They clashed hard, fists, grunts, dust flying. The revolver flew from Cole's hand, landing somewhere in the brush. The man landed a punch, but Cole fought like a man who had fought alone for years, with a fury carved in silence. Finally, Cole landed a brutal blow that sent the thief collapsing. Breathing hard, bleeding from the brow, Cole turned back to June. She was barely conscious now, her breath shallow. He scooped her into his arms once more, and hoisted her onto the horse, mounting behind her, holding her steady with one arm as he rode back toward the cabin. By the time they reached Cross Pine, the stars had spilled across the sky like scattered dust. He carried her inside, laid her gently onto the cot near the fireplace, then set to work. He heated water, cleaned her wounds, pressed a damp cloth to her forehead, changed the blood-soaked bandage above her eye. And then he just sat, one hand resting over hers. "You came," she whispered sometime after midnight, barely audible. His thumb brushed her knuckles. "Always," he answered. She drifted off again, her hand never letting go of his. That night, Cole did not sleep. He sat beside her, watching the fire's glow paint her face in golden shadow, and thought to himself that silence was not always the absence of sound. Sometimes it was the space between two heartbeats that stayed. June awoke to the scent of pine and the soft crackle of a fire. Her head throbbed, and her body ached with every breath. As her eyes fluttered open, she found herself lying on a worn but clean cot, a woolen blanket pulled up to her chin. The room was dim, lit only by the flicker of firelight and a single oil lamp on the table. Cole stood by the stove, stirring a kettle slowly, one hand wrapped in linen. His shirt was stained with dried blood, some of it hers, she guessed. The silence wasn't cold this time, it was thick with something unspoken. He glanced over when he noticed her stirring. "You're awake," he said simply, his voice low and gruff. She tried to sit, but the pain in her ribs warned her against it. "What happened?" she asked. "You were late," he said, as if that explained everything. "I rode out. Found your wagon overturned, supplies gone. You, bleeding." June closed her eyes, the memory flashing back like a bad dream. The man, the hit to her temple, the feel of cold dirt against her cheek. "You brought me back?" "I had to." She looked around. Bandages rested in a bowl beside the bed. A cloth had been laid over her forehead. Her boots sat neatly by the door, cleaned of mud. "You stayed with me?" He nodded. "All night." June blinked slowly, letting the warmth of the cabin settle over her. "Why?" Cole didn't answer right away. He poured a cup of hot water and added a pinch of dried herbs, then walked over and offered it to her. She took it with both hands. "Thank you." He sat down in the chair across from her. "You were out cold. Fever hit just before dawn." June sipped the tea, the bitterness grounding her. "You took care of me," she said softly. "I owed you that much." "No," she shook her head slowly. "You didn't." The silence stretched again. This time, June filled it. "My husband died at the Rio Grande. They said it was quick, but I know better. He wasn't the kind to go down easy. After that, I couldn't stay in town. Everyone wanted to tell me how sorry they were, but no one wanted to hire a widow who could shoot better than their sons." Cole didn't interrupt. He just listened, his gaze steady. "So I took the jobs no one wanted, cold trails, mountain roads, men with names no one says out loud. I did it all because grief can't catch you if you keep moving." Her voice cracked slightly. "But sometimes it still finds you." Cole leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I know that kind of grief." She looked up. His eyes were distant. "There was someone," he said. "I gave her everything. Even changed my name for her. She changed hers too, right before she signed over my land to someone else." June's breath caught. She said, "I loved the land more than her." Maybe she was right. But I would have shared it all. I just never thought I'd have to fight to keep it. "I'm sorry," June whispered. He shrugged. "It's why I came here. Alone is simple. Alone doesn't steal." They sat in silence, firelight dancing across the wood-paneled walls. June reached out, gently touching the edge of his bandaged hand. "You're not alone now." Cole stared at her fingers, then up at her face. His eyes shimmered, but not from the fire. In a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "In the fever. I dreamed you walked away. Just like she did. I begged you not to." "You didn't dream it," June murmured. "You said it out loud." He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. "Sorry." She shook her head. "Don't be. I'm still here." Their hands met in the space between them. No kiss. No promises. Just warmth shared between two broken pieces trying to fit again. "I'm not here because of what you lost," she said. Eyes steady. "I'm here because of who you are when you think no one's watching." Cole gripped her hand a little tighter. "Then stay," he said. "I will," she replied. "Not for the land, not for the money. For you." The fire crackled. Snow began to fall outside again, soft against the window pane. And for the first time in years, Cole Weston let himself believe in something he couldn't buy, something he might actually deserve. The morning she should have gone, June stayed in bed. The wagon sat ready out front, canvas tied tight, a fresh list in her coat pocket. But her hands would not move. Her boots stayed by the hearth. The fire crackled like it knew something she did not. For the first time since she started the route to Cross Pine, she missed a delivery. It was not anger that drove her decision, nor fear. Just a question: did he want her for the company, or simply because she came with the supplies? The days passed slowly. Snow came and melted, then came again. June chopped her own wood, mended old blankets, tried to quiet the hollowness that had grown like a storm cloud behind her ribs. 1 week later, the town was busy with market chatter when the sound of hooves echoed louder than usual. Dust lifted, necks craned. A tall figure rode into the square, horse caked in mud, hat pulled low but unmistakable in posture, rigid, watchful. "Cole Weston." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "That's the man from the mountains," whispered Mrs. Holloway, clutching her apron. "I thought he was just a ghost story," said a boy, eyes wide. Cole dismounted in one smooth motion. His boots hit the dirt with a thud that silenced even the gossipers. He stood still a moment, then walked straight into the general store. "Where's June?" he asked, voice rough with disuse but clear. The storekeeper blinked, stunned. "You mean June who delivers here?" "Yes. She lives out past the ridge, about 2 miles east. What's this about, mister?" Cole did not answer. He turned and left without another word. The next knock on June's door was not from wind or weather. It came slow, steady, like someone who had walked through more than snow to be there. She opened it. There he stood, dust on his shoulders, a tear in his coat, eyes searching hers like a man scanning for shore after weeks at sea. "You came down the mountain," she said quietly. "I had to." June stepped back slightly, surprised. "Why?" He reached up, removed his hat. His hair was damp with melted snow, flattened from the ride. "I did not know what it meant, when you stopped coming." She held his gaze. He continued, voice low. "I thought maybe you were sick, or hurt. Then I thought, maybe you were just done." "And if I was?" she asked. "I would still be here." He stepped forward, slowly. Not like a man used to asking, but like a man who had decided silence no longer served. "I have bought land, horses, water rights, miles of fence. I once bought an entire mountain range just to see if I could. But now..." He swallowed. "The only thing I am afraid to lose, truly afraid, is one person I cannot buy. One person who came to my door not for gold, not for status, just because she said she would." His eyes met hers, unflinching. "June. Hun." She had never heard her name like that, like a vow wrapped in gravel and warmth. Her throat tightened. "I needed to know," she whispered. "If I did not bring the parcels, would you still want the person?" "I do," he said. "Even if you never brought another thing again." June looked at his hand. Dirt under his nails, scratches along the knuckles. A man who had ridden hard for one reason only. She opened the door wider. "You want coffee?" she asked, voice cracking just a little. He smiled. "If you're offering." She stepped aside. "Always." And as he crossed the threshold, muddy boots and all, something shifted. Not loud, not grand, just real. The door closed behind him, and for the first time in 5 years, Cole Weston entered a home not built by money or mapped by land, but one built by choice, and called by name. The trail to Cross Pine felt different this time. No crates clattered in the wagon bed. No list weighed down her pocket. June sat beside Cole, their horses moving in quiet rhythm, the cart behind them light and empty. But her heart, full, nervous, hopeful. The cabin came into view, rough-hewn wood, smoke curling from the chimney, and her shawl still hanging by the door where she had once left it to dry. Nothing had changed. Yet everything had. As Cole helped her down, she looked up at him, arms crossed but eyes soft. "You sure about this?" His brow furrowed, like he had not expected the question. "About what?" "Me staying, not delivering, just being here." Cole removed his hat, held it against his chest. "You ask like you are looking for a reason to go." "I'm looking for a reason to stay," she said. "A real one." He stepped forward, boots crunching in the brittle grass. "I have no gold left in my hands. No titles. No promises I did not already break once in my life." He took her hand, rough against hers. "But this time," he said, voice low, "I will not let you walk away." They stood like that, her fingers curled in his calloused palm, the cold wind brushing past as if to test the heat between them. Inside, the fire burned steady. June unpacked slowly, laying her things beside his, not in separate corners, but woven in with his life. Her mug next to his, her brush beside his comb. She tucked a small pouch of wild lavender in the bedding, then smiled when she found he had already done the same. That night they cooked beans and cornbread and sat side by side watching the flames. Their conversation was easy but sparse. They had learned the kind of comfort that did not need filling. Days passed, routines formed. She fixed the torn saddle strap while he mended the roof. Together they trained the little dog Cole had found months ago near a thicket, sprightly, muddy, and foolishly brave. It was that same little dog who caused the storm. The wind came fast one evening, thunder dragging its feet across the mountains. Rain spat at the windows. Somewhere in the chaos, a door flapped open, and the dog, spooked, darted into the night. "I'll go," June said, already reaching for her coat. Cole grabbed her arm. "He will come back. He's small, he's scared." "So am I," Cole said. But June was already out the door. She called the dog's name through the whipping rain, her lantern barely cutting through the dark. Wind howled, trees leaned, the creek overflowed its edge. She found paw prints by the edge of the woods, but as she turned, her foot caught a root slick with mud. The world tilted. Pain flared in her ankle. She gasped, falling hard, her lantern shattering nearby. She tried to stand, could not. Then, a sound. Hooves, fast, familiar. Cole dismounted before the horse had even stopped. "June." "I'm here," she croaked, wet and trembling. He dropped to his knees, mud soaking his coat. "What were you thinking?" "Same thing you would have," she whispered. He scooped her up, cradling her like something he could not bear to break. The dog appeared moments later, tail down, ears flat, shivering but safe. Back at the cabin, he placed her on the bed, peeled off her wet clothes, wrapped her in blankets, built the fire higher than ever. He held her hand all night. She woke once in the dark to find him sitting by her, eyes glistening, jaw clenched tight. "I thought I lost you," he said, voice almost cracking. "You didn't. I have lost land, lost money, lost trust in more people than I can count." His grip tightened. "But nothing has ever scared me like that moment out there. Nothing ever made me beg, until I thought I'd never hear your voice again." She touched his cheek. "You'll always hear it," she whispered. "Even if you do not speak. Especially then." He kissed her forehead, lips trembling. And when morning came, the storm gone and the world wet with new light, Cole Weston stepped outside not as a man alone, but as someone who had finally found what he could never buy. A reason to stay. A name to call. A woman worth fearing the storm for. And June, she had stopped delivering parcels. Because now, she delivered nothing but her heart, every day, to the same door. And this time, she stayed. The last traces of snow had melted into the thirsty soil, leaving behind soft, damp earth and the first bright tips of green. Wildflowers, cautious and bold at once, began to lift their heads along the fence posts. Birds nested in the eaves. The wind had lost its teeth, and the sun, finally, stayed a little longer in the sky. Spring had come to Cross Pine. June stood on the porch of the cabin, her old shawl wrapped around her shoulders, not because she was cold, but because it still carried his scent. Her hands were calloused now, stronger than before, and her hair was tied back with a piece of leather cord he had once used to bind fence rails. She looked down at the garden bed they had turned together last autumn. Now it pulsed with new life, tiny rows of lettuce, beans, and onions stretching into order from the chaos of soil. Behind her, the screen door creaked. "You done planting the future?" Cole's voice came, low and quiet as ever. She smiled but did not turn. "Only if you plan to help me harvest it." Boots stepped behind her, the familiar weight of his hand brushing her lower back. "June," he said, not like it was her name, but like it was a promise. She turned. He held something in his palm. Not a ring, not gold, not polished silver. Just a simple iron loop, dull, unadorned, shaped unevenly. Forged by hand, likely in the same fire that warmed their nights and cooked their meals. He knelt before her on the packed dirt, the way a man might kneel not to ask for permission, but to anchor a vow into the ground between them. "This is not much," Cole said, looking up at her, eyes steady and full. "No diamonds. No shine. But it was shaped in my hands from the latch off the gate we fixed together last fall." June blinked, heart skipping once. He took her hand and pressed the metal band into her palm. "I do not have much to offer you, but I have the years I have left. I have this land. And I have a heart that does not change like the weather. If you're still not tired of my quiet, would you do me the honor of being my wife?" June laughed, a soft, startled thing, caught between tears and joy. She nodded before she could speak. "Yes, you quiet fool," she whispered. "Of course, yes." They married a week later. No white dress, no preacher with a Bible. Just a clearing near the creek, the garden in bloom, and the little ones from the town dancing barefoot through the grass tossing wildflowers. One of the boys played a fiddle that had only 3 strings, and the women brought biscuits and honey. No one brought gifts except for a neighbor who left a single calf tied by the gate. June wore a blue ribbon in her hair and a linen dress she had sewn herself. Cole wore the same shirt he had worn the first time she saw him stand silently in the snow. They said no vows. Only looked at each other as the old man from town, who once sold them grain, raised his hand and said, "Then by the witness of these hills, and the folks here, you are man and wife." People cheered. June cried. Cole, for the first time in his life, smiled so wide it hurt his cheeks. That night, when the sky turned black and the stars blinked awake, they sat in front of the fire, a single quilt wrapped around their shoulders. She leaned into him, her fingers tracing the lines of his scarred hands. "I do not need you to buy me anything," she said, her voice hushed. "I do not need gold. I do not need land papers or banknotes." He said nothing, just let her speak. "I just need this," she whispered, lifting her hand, the one that now wore the iron band. "Just you. Just your hand, not letting go." Cole turned toward her, kissed her forehead. "You have it," he said. "Not because you cost nothing, but because no price could ever match what you are to me." She exhaled into his shoulder, and he held her tighter. Outside, the wind swept gently across the fields. The cabin creaked like an old friend settling deeper into its roots. And in that cabin, by that fire, two lives finally rested. No longer waiting, no longer running. Only choosing. Choosing to begin, choosing to stay, choosing together to call that quiet place not just a home, but a life. If your heart paused for just a beat when June whispered, "I do not need you to buy me anything. Just do not let go of this hand," and Cole answered, "All my life, I will hold you only with my heart," then you have felt what we believe in here at Wild West Love Stories, that even in the loneliest stretches of frontier land, love can take root, quietly, fiercely, and true. If you are drawn to stories where trust does not need contracts, where hearts are not for sale, and where a simple touch speaks louder than 1,000 words, then hit that subscribe button. We tell tales from the Wild West, not just horses, guns, and smoke, but of people who were once broken learning how to love again. Do not miss what comes next. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for a journey that reaches your soul, week after week. Here the stories may be old, but the feelings are timeless.